In this video, we're going to talk about how to instantly color more professionally. So this is in Clip Studio Paint EX or Pro. This also applies to Photoshop or whatever other art program you're using. A lot of people, when they start out, do a few things wrong, or at least that look very amateurish. When we're doing flats, the first layer of colors that you do underneath your line art will be the flat colors with no highlights or shadows. One of the mistakes people make is going too saturated right out of the gate. So if I click on this, and you will see that this red here is very bright, very saturated. If I click on a less saturated one, that one is a little easier on the eyes and it's not as intense. We want to have more of a kind of mid-tone to these flat colors. So once you get your mid-tones, flat colors, not too saturated, we want to move on to shadows and highlight. And people make way too much use of the airbrush when doing shadows. So I've gone through and done a let pass here, and it'll end up looking something like this. Like they'll get the airbrush tool, they'll go on to the multiply layer, and they'll start just using the airbrush. And I think it's because we perceive light in very soft gradients, so we think, well, our colors must do that as well. But it kind of looks a little amateurish. And same way with the screen, they'll go in and do this, and you'll get this kind of look here. If you want to get a gradient, use it sparingly, do it here and there, and I'm going to show you how to do that. So you can see the difference between that one and something more like this. There are still some softer transitions, but they're used very sparingly. So the way we get that is we go back to our flats and we'll set a multiply layer. And I'm going to bring the opacity down to maybe 50%. I can adjust it if I want starker shadows. And I'll select a purple. There's a couple ways to do this. The traditional way is in Photoshop with colorists that often would do what are called cuts. So if I wanted to get under the neck here, I would select an area. Then I would get my gradient tool and I would just start at the darker side, and you'll see it kind of fades out. And there's that's called a cut. If I wanted to make it even darker, I could go a little smaller, grab the gradient tool, and then you'll see as I zoom in here, there's this gradient kind of thing. You'll see that a whole lot in especially comics from the 90s, kind of overdid this. The same thing applies with the screen layer. This is one way to do it. If I had, let's say, light coming from here, and I wanted the harsher light coming from the right, you'll see we get this here. And if I didn't go the whole way to the edge, stopped halfway, it would be even a softer gradient because that gradient's not hitting the edge of the selection. In Clip Studio Paint, one of the ways I like to do this, I rarely do that just for the sake of speed, but one of the things I do is I will just grab a pen tool. We're going to grab a purple color again, and I'll go down here and I'll just do a hard, and you could do the entire thing in just hard lines. I do this a lot. It's a more kind of, I want to say maybe even almost animated kind of feel. But if I want to go in and soften it up, I will just grab the eraser tool, switch it to soft, which is almost like an airbrushed eraser in a sense. And I'll just go to the edge and just slowly soften that up just a bit. And I'll leave maybe even a little bit of the hard edge, but it kind of emulates that cut effect without having to switch between the tools of, selecting and then doing the gradient. And I find it goes a little bit faster. Go lighter than you think you need with these colors. So try not to go too dark initially like this, unless you have a very stark shadow. Build it up gradually, and at the beginning take a break, come back and look at it. You'll see that is very, very harsh lighting, and there's a time and place for that. Here you've seen I have used the airbrush only for that very light kind of redness around the cheek and nose, and I've done just a very little up here in the highlight, but everything else is kind of that solid color, maybe erased a little bit here and there. So try to avoid going in and overusing airbrush. Go for more solid areas of light and shadow. Don't overuse the airbrush. Hope that helps. Please leave a comment. It helps. Let me know any other tutorials that you'd like to see in Clip Studio Paint or anything else. And be sure to like and subscribe. Hit the bell for notifications, and I'll see you next time.